In many, many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man, but the consequences of him being president of the United States are brutally serious. There are things that he says that will be the subject of skits and laughter and jokes. But words have meaning coming from someone who aspires to stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
Your eyes do not deceive you guys. That was Vice President Kamala Harris with Liz Cheney. And yes, she's complaining about Donald Trump making jokes. Meanwhile, she's sitting right next to one of the biggest warmongers in the country. So a sense of humor isn't welcome in the White House, but war is? Okay. And this could be one of the biggest mistakes of her entire campaign. This town hall is similar to any interview Kamala Harris has done in the past few weeks. What's noticeable is how difficult it is to understand what she's trying to say. And I'm not talking about word salads here, guys. Just listen to her talking about the Constitution.
In my career now, whether it was as the elected district attorney, elected attorney general, and then elected United States senator, and of course now vice president, I've counted that I have taken the oath of office 6 times. And for the elected leaders here, we know it is an oath that one must take sincerely and unequivocally, which is an oath, among other things, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and to understand what those principles represent and what they require of the individual who holds the office in the public trust. And let's not undervalue that point as well. It is not about the individual. It is not about what is in their personal interest. It is about what is for and in the spirit of the public good. And this is a moment in this election that presents a real contrast among how I, as one of the 2 nominees, and my opponent, the former president, think of that duty. And it is a duty, by the way. There are certain things in our lives that we have the choice if we feel like it. And then there are certain things that are just fundamentally a duty.
Trump was right, guys. The minute you give Kamala Harris the time to talk, she loses voters because her biggest flaw is that she thinks that she's better than everybody else. Meanwhile, you got Donald Trump talking to the people and he's actually listening to their problems. Because of that, it's created this amazing clip where even he is surprised at how bad things are under the Biden-Harris term.
My issue was more the energy. I've been paying $2,100 since I first opened up. In the last 7 months, it shot up to $15,000.
What?
Now, we can argue that $15,000 is not even plausible given the cost of energy. And reports have come out that this was a billing issue. But what's true is that the cost of living has shot up for every single American, all of which happened under the current administration. But you got Kamala Harris on here talking about a new way forward. She's talking about turning the page as if their term is already over. But listen to how she responds when asked about this.
You know, you talk a lot about a new way forward. You talk about turning the page. What's on the next page? Talk to us about.
You want a preview?
Yeah, give me a spoiler alert. You know, just tell us what's the rest of the chapter.
Well, first of all, I will say that it is a metaphor that is meant to also describe my intention to embark on a new generation of leadership, and needless to say, mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to it my own ideas, my own experiences. But it is also about moving past what, frankly, I think has been the last decade of the American discourse being influenced by Donald Trump in a way that has had the effect of suggesting we as Americans should point the finger at one another, in a way that has been using the power of the presidency to demean and to divide us. I think people are exhausted with that, rightly. And it frankly does not lead to the strength of our nation to tell the American people that we must be suspicious of one another, distrust one another.
Now, again, she offers a whole lot of nothing here. And like clockwork, Donald Trump is at fault for everything that's wrong with America today. That he's the guy who wants to divide us. That the American dream is now out of reach because he was the president 4 years ago. Which is kind of amusing to say the least, because even Kamala Harris knows that it was their administration that killed that very dream.
And, you know, the idea of the American dream was something that previous generations could count on, not as much anymore.
She's right. There's no amount of propaganda that can change what's happened during her term. Because if things were great, the message should be one that continues the policies and the ideals of President Joe Biden. But instead, they're doing their best to defer the blame of their mistakes to Donald Trump. Something that's not working because I think they forgot to tell the president of their game plan. He's out there sinking Kamala Harris's campaign as we speak.
Obviously, been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
Well, there you have it, folks. It's no wonder that they're losing the support of the working class, because the working class is sick and tired of being lied to. Kamala Harris would have you believe that she's going to do something that's different from Joe Biden. But the president, her own boss, is telling us that this is not the case, and that this could very well be an extension of the Joe Biden presidency, which could equate to a fourth term for former President Barack Obama, or so they say. Now, it's also not a good look to have the endorsement of individuals who are mostly pro-war. Guys, I'm talking about the likes of Dick and Liz Cheney. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been talking about bringing peace to the global stage. But if you ask Kamala Harris, he's going about things the wrong way.
This concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation, and then Pearl Harbor happened. Let's remember recent history. Europe remembers it well. Then when we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us, we have to remember history, that isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends, isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us from harm in terms of our national security. So I say that to emphasize a point that the Congresswoman made.
So I guess that's why we're helping out Ukraine and all these other countries with billions of dollars in funding and weapons, right? But at the same time, you got veterans struggling to find a home, people on Social Security struggling to pay for their needs. Now, with that being said, do any of you guys believe that this war is the answer to our problems? Or should they instead focus on putting Americans first? I read a book a long time ago, and it basically said something that was really powerful and profound to me. And it said something along the lines of, look at your 5 closest friends, and typically your income is an average of your 5 closest friends. Now, with that being said, I was kind of like thinking, okay, well, how do I find people who made way more than me so I could increase my chance having a higher income? I mean, it only made sense, right? For less than a cup of coffee a day, for less than $1 a day, join a powerful network of people who are ready to change their lives for the better. And I will be putting a limit on this group, so get in while you can. Be positively motivated by others who are also on the same pursuit. So I'm going to leave a link for you guys so you can join me over on the Life Pursuit Network in the description down below this video. So check it out, guys, and let's not be a victim of this great wealth transfer that is taking place right now.
The Washington Post has just said, in terms of endorsing a presidential candidate, that it will not endorse a candidate this election cycle. And they will not be endorsing candidates in any future elections. I mean, they are changing decades of tradition for them at this point, 11 days out.
So, Judge Janine, she has not done a lot of campaign events this week. Well,
How do you
first of
see
all,
she has a scheduling conflict?
First of all, she took a day and a half to do the CNN interview, which was a disaster. And secondly, she's ducking Joe Rogan. The woman is incapable of a conversation. Do you know Axios reported that she actually had to do some kind of mock dinners on how she could communicate with donors during dinners, how to hold a wine glass, how to have a conversation. Remember, she didn't go to the Al Smith dinner, and in a racist clothes, you don't insult Roman Catholics, you just don't do it, okay? Because she can't even be self-deprecating with a script. Even her message was made by someone else. So am I surprised she's not doing it? Absolutely not. First of all, she's in Texas. What's the problem? She's already there where Joe Rogan is in Texas. It is the #1 podcast in the country, if not in the world, as far as I know. And you need men? Go to Joe. That's where you go. And finally, I don't care if you have a campaign rally, a dinner, an interview, you cancel them all for Joe Rogan.
So much hype in negotiations. Kamala Harris is chickening out of her big Joe Rogan interview with her mouthpiece blaming on a scheduling conflict. Watch.
We talked with Rogan and his team about the podcast. Unfortunately, it isn't going to work out right now because of the scheduling of this period of the campaign. But, you know, she's taking her message to these huge platform audiences. Donald Trump with Joe Rogan, that's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah. An interesting thing to watch, indeed. Donald Trump more than happy to bring his MAGA message to Joe Rogan's massive audience of over 14 million listeners. He's sitting down with the popular podcast host during a visit to Austin, Texas today. And it could prove to be a critical interview in a razor-tight race.
There at the wall, which only means one thing, there is a new exclusive poll. David.
Our final national poll of this 2024 race. And what does it show in this stable race? A tied race, dead heat among likely voters, 47% Harris, 47% Trump. It obviously doesn't get closer to that. And I want to show you what this race has looked like over time. It has been remarkably stable. This goes all the way back to when Joe Biden was still running in August of last year. You saw it was a 47-46 race there. You see here the red line, the Donald Trump line. He's never been behind, outside the margin of error, statistically trailing in this race the entire time that we have polled this race. Let's look at it by party ID here, Dana. You see overwhelmingly Democrats are with Harris, as you would expect. Overwhelmingly down here, 92% of Republicans are with Trump. Harris is getting about 7% of Republicans. I know she's making a big play for some of those Trump-resistant Republicans of late we've seen. And look at the independents. It's actually within the margin of error of that subgroup. So there's no real clear leader with independents, but numerically, Harris has this slight higher number there. And we've been talking a lot about the gender gap in this race. It's a little smaller in our poll overall than we've seen in some other polling, but among likely voters, Harris is +6, 50% to 44% with women, and Donald Trump is +6, equally 51% to 45% with men. That is a 12-point gender gap.
Now, this is a national poll, as we have said until we're blue in the face, and we'll continue to say. Remind people that that is not how presidents are chosen. It's by the Electoral College and in battleground states. However, what this poll is telling us is some of the reasons why this race is so close in those battlegrounds as well.
Now, speaking of which, billionaire ex-CEO Elon Musk is thinking about the American people right now. In fact, he's giving away $1 million a day to random people who sign a petition in Pennsylvania. Guys, you're not going to want to miss out on the news, so make sure you watch my previous video live stream about this where I cover this in detail. Now, as always, appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you next time.